All right, good afternoon and welcome to session 3. Now, I do know that there is currently a sign-in issue with eCampus, so there's a good possibility that there will probably only be the only two of us here, depending on how many people are able to call in or how many people choose to call in. So, we're going to go ahead and get this started here. So, just real quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing a quick overview of the slides from this week's video lecture. We're going to be doing a quick goes over of the first 3 discussion board topics, and then finally just general question and answer. One thing I did want to make sure everybody's aware of, there is a playlist available on the eCampus site. It is listed under the video lectures and PowerPoints. It should be the first link that comes up. And that playlist goes to all of the lectures directly on YouTube. The straight up playlist is going to be alternating between lectures and these conference sessions. Okay, so if you need to review any of the lectures and you don't want to try scrolling down that page, you can just go straight to the playlist and find the one that you need, or play them all at once, whatever you want to do. All right, so we're going to start with the 6 to 10 core concepts. You may recall we did the first 5 last week. So concept number 6, purpose determines form, style, and organization. Okay, just real quick, the purpose of a piece of writing is the form of that writing, how you write it, and the way your ideas are presented. So that will include form, what type of writing it is based on the purpose, style, what kind of language and level of formality you expect it to present, okay, and organization, how's the information need to be presented and in what order. Okay, some of these are dictated by the circumstances of what you are writing and who you're writing to. As a main example, I was talking mostly about resumes and other sorts of professional writing. Okay, this also includes things like resume cover letters, where you may need to include a letter of intent to go along with your resume to try to show, okay, this is why I want to work for you. This is why I'm the right person for the job. Okay, let's apply this concept. So first off, determine the appropriate form for the rhetorical situation. Okay, again, some of them will be more obvious than others, such as letters, resumes. The other ones, you need to think about what the audience expects and the type of writing you want to present in order to determine the correct form. Your writing has to conform with whatever your audience wants you to present to them. Okay, it doesn't matter what your argument is. If you're trying to present, they have a certain expectation. You need to meet that. Become familiar with the conventions of the form of writing you're doing. Okay, for instance, with a resume, look at what people are doing right and or wrong on a resume. Do your best to tailor your writing to fit into the best possible form conventions. Make sure that you are following what is the best practices in that case, especially in that case. And then pay attention to organization. Terminology and definitions of terminology. Now, as much as possible, you need to adhere to organizational guidelines if they are presented to you. Okay, if they tell you that they need a certain style, you need to cooperate with that. Otherwise, you need to keep the necessities of your subject and your audience in mind when organizing information in your writing. All right, so the main example I gave you here was for worst resume ever. I asked you guys to put forth your what you had found that was wrong with this essay, and then I actually told you what was wrong with it in the lecture itself. So the challenge was to find those errors before I told you what those errors were. Okay. You still have the opportunity to do that. I am not going to go over every single problem with this essay. Every single problem with this resume. There's just way too many. But I will allow you to search for them on your own. All right, writing is a social activity. Writers write for an audience. As much as some writers will claim they only write for themselves, most are attempting to reach an audience of some sort. They're going to inform, entertain, or enlighten. Now, in return, the audience is going to influence the writer, even to the point of whether the writer writes at all. Okay, I did include that example of John Candy Toole in the lecture. As you may have noticed, I stuck a subtitle on there to say that I misidentified his first name as Patrick, but it actually his first name is John. And that's my bad, mainly because I don't really think of the guy because I hate his work. Okay, I think we established by now that one thing he's known for is Confederacy of Dunces, and I really didn't care for that book at all. Okay, but that was the example I gave for not having an audience and how that sometimes determines whether a writer continues to write. Okay, often involve others in the writing process. Okay, you need to do that for this class especially because it's going to involve getting feedback. It'll involve peer reviews, simply just asking questions such as, does this sound weird to you? Okay. Then you have the rules, conventions, and forms of writing are basically social constructs. Okay. These are the ways we do things, mainly because it's been accepted for years and years. Okay, that's not to say that you can't defy those expectations. In fact, sometimes it behooves authors to do that because maybe the strictures of organization, the strictures of the style don't fit what they're trying to say. Right, so how to apply this idea of it being a social activity? So you start off by placing your writing in context. Okay, focus on the rhetorical situation that you're arriving into, and make the writing social by the very nature of that focus. Okay, remember your audience. Remember who you're writing for. Remember that people are going to be you want eyeballs on this work. Okay, so just find whose eyeballs you want. Second, remember the larger context. Big picture thinking is the plus here. How's your writing work into the greater scheme of things, or how's your idea applicable on a larger scale? Okay, think about what your writing has to say about that subject in a greater sense, not so much the limited sense of this is why I'm writing about this, this is what I want to write about, but more in the sense of how does this affect the audience themselves, how does this affect the society, how does this affect the world that I'm writing in. Also, seek the input of others. Do not, under any circumstances, write in a vacuum. Other readers can help you, whether it be through grammar checking, idea generation, or simply as a matter of giving you a test audience. Let people read your work. Let people see what you're doing. And also let them give you feedback. The worst thing a writer can do is just absolutely ignore feedback. Okay, you don't want that to happen. What you want to do is allow yourself to absorb this stuff because this is your audience that's talking to you. This is who you want to reach. If they're having trouble with the writing, then you're going to have to adjust it so that they do understand it and they do get your point. Okay. Then you write for your readers. Remember your audience and keep them in mind as you write. Okay. Keep in mind who you're aiming it for, who you are trying to reach. Okay. There we go. Now we also had a brief assignment in there for social writing analysis, and that was to take the icebreaker essays and answer 5 questions. Okay. Some folks have done this already. A number of people have. Some other people have not thus far. Five questions to answer. Consider the topic. Why do you write about what you wrote about? Think about what is, who you're writing for, what purpose. Describe an input you were given while writing the work. Examine the essay's broader relevance in terms of the wider scheme of things. And consider what your experience writing this suggests about writing social nature. Okay, so let's get to the next slide here. The next core concept, revision is an essential part of writing. Okay, this goes into the idea that you need to write multiple drafts and you need to be workshopping. Okay, no writer in the history of the world has ever gotten it right on the first try. As much as people want you to believe that's possible, it's really not. Okay. Revision is a well-accepted aspect of the writing process simply because it's sometimes in your best interest to walk away and come back to a work with some fresher perspectives. Okay. So if you want to improve yourself and improve that particular piece of writing, sometimes you just need to walk away from it and then come back and say, what can I fix? Okay. Uh, so those fresher perspectives can come from your own new experiences. They can come from other people who workshop the writing with you. This is why we have our team. This is one of the reasons why we have our teams, so that we can have that feedback, those back and forth from different perspectives. Okay. Most writers will break up a writing assignment into smaller parts, write small parts, and come back to the writing off and on as new ideas arise or other changes occur. Okay. These are fairly normal when it comes to writing, especially with larger works and larger assignments. The example I gave you in the lecture was my master's thesis, which was humongous. Okay, in terms of essay size, I will note here, it was not the largest even in my subject matter that had been submitted in the past to that particular college. One nice thing about master's theses is that generally what they require you to do is bind them and donate a copy to the department, donate a copy to the campus library, and usually they allow you to do one for yourself and one for everybody who's on your thesis committee. That is to say, the professors that evaluate the thesis or coach you in the writing of it. Okay. In my case, I had five copies bound. I kept one. Okay, 2 went to my committee, 1 with the library, to the department. They kept them in a bookshelf, and you could peruse those theses so that you could see what people had done in the past if you needed an idea for a subject matter, or if you needed an idea for how the writing was supposed to go. Okay. And I will say the shortest thesis that I found in that bookshelf was about 45 pages. The longest one was approximately 350. Okay. And some of them were about some seriously wacky topics. I mean, I have a really good friend of mine who's now has a doctorate and actually teaches at that college now. She did her master's before I did, and I actually got a chance to look at her thesis after she graduated. And she had written, I want to say, 85 pages on 17th century pornography. Which is kind of an oddly specific topic, but it is one that she apparently had an interest in. Oh wait, no, that was just a class she took. The actual topic of her thesis was on feminist adventure literature of the 17th century. Okay, I didn't even know that even existed. All right, so this is kind of what you find with master's theses, but also getting into this, that's another example of an essay that you need to do in section. Little small bits that will help you to create the bigger picture by doing it one small section at a time. Okay, as I mentioned before, the theses were usually divided into chapters. So if you work one chapter at a time, it's a little easier to handle than trying to do the entire thing all at once. Okay, so let's see. Applying this concept. Understand revision as a process of discovery and meaning making. Okay, so again, your immediate thoughts are not going to make a fully fleshed out piece of writing. At most, it's going to be ideas put out there. They're not going to have a kind of form. So what you need to do is go back and refine those thoughts as you make new discoveries and learn more to make a well-rounded work. You need to integrate what you learn and integrate some form to those thoughts to make them into a fleshed out essay. Okay. One big thing, don't try to do everything all at once. Okay. It's a common student problem because you're trying to, I've seen a lot of guys who tried to write the Great American Novel in a single draft. Okay. Just write when you're initially writing. Okay. Don't worry about revising anything. Don't worry about fixing problems. Just get the ideas out there. That's what workshopping is for. Okay. Also, leave the editing for last. That's what the proofreading workshop is for. So don't correct yourself. Don't censor yourself. Don't edit yourself. Just write. Okay. Uh, get it all down there. Okay. Your workshop classmates will help you refine it into what you want it to be. Okay. Uh, next core concept: there's always a voice in writing, even when there isn't an I. Okay. Voice is a difficult concept to define, but in writing, this primarily comes down to your word choice, your vocabulary, and how you utilize both. So basically, it is the language that you use that makes it sound like you are the one who's speaking. Okay, that gives you the voice. Okay, certain words that individuals use mark the work as theirs, whether they personalize the work or by using a self-referential pronoun or not. So no matter whether you're trying to be impartial or remove yourself from it, they're still going to know it's you based on the language you choose. Okay. Again, I mentioned the metaphor of the martial artist who has a particular style that's kind of like a footprint. I always say footprint, but I want to say fingerprint. It's very unique to each fighter, so that no matter if they're in disguise, you can tell who it is. Okay, that's a very common. That is a very common stereotype that you find in martial arts films or any kind of martial arts media. The same actually is actually true of writers. Okay, you can tell who a writer is typically by the style they use. Okay, and you may recall if you watched the video lecture already, I showed you an example of this. There's a funny scene from Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, where a student gets busted using a very vivid metaphor at the end of a history paper, which he's used on history papers on varying topics, including one that he had written the year before on the exact same topic. But in this case, the reason why he got caught doing it was because he was writing the paper for somebody else. Okay. So, but they could still tell it was him because he had used this metaphor of spreading like a raging wildfire. Okay, he in a what he got in trouble for using for was a paper on westward expansion. However, he also used it in his own paper on westward expansion, and also about the women's suffrage movement, and about one other historical period, which I can't remember off the top of my head. Okay, but he had used that phrase so many times it had become his trademark, and he just couldn't help himself. He just stuck it in unconsciously when he was writing this paper for his friend. Okay. The other thing I noted here, some authors become associated exclusively with certain vocabulary and also certain usage. Okay. The example I gave was William Faulkner, Apotheosis. There's another example I give later on about Ernest Hemingway, and his style became his voice, and his style was considered to be, by a lot of critics, to be masculine in nature. But basically what it amounted to was short paragraphs, short sentences, and words that were, if at all possible, monosyllabic. Okay. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was a bad writer. He was actually a really excellent writer, but you have to be careful about doing that sort of thing, because if you do it wrong, you have a tendency to sound like a caveman. His stuff does not sound like it was written like a caveman. Okay. Beyond language choice, sometimes simply the tone used when discussing a topic personalizes a work without needing an I. Okay. This also in terms of your language choice, in terms of how you describe things, because your own personality and sometimes your biases can come through by what language. There are certain topics that have loaded language where you can tell what side you're on in that argument based on which loaded phrase you use. Okay, there are certain ones that are exclusively associated with one side or the other in a dispute. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but if you look at any news stories in recent years, particularly on certain topics, you will find that depending on the writer's biases, they'll use one set of language or they'll use another set of language. Okay. Let's see. Applying this concept. Recognize and develop your own writerly voice. Okay. Look at things that you do. that you consistently write, even when trying not to be obviously yourself, and embrace those quirks. Don't try to hide them. Okay, we don't want everybody to sound like a robot. Right? Everyone has to have their own style. Everyone has to have their own unique voice. Okay, if you can find what those quirks are and emphasize them in your writing, that will go a long way to making you sound unique, to giving you a unique voice, and to actually improving your work because you'll be a bit more comfortable writing it. Okay, I will say a good rule of thumb here is to just maybe a few times here when you're talking to other people, try to keep track of what words you use and how you use those words. Okay, and then try to emulate that on the page when you go to write your own work, when you go to write your essays. Emulate how you speak on the page. Now, granted, it's going to have to be slightly more formal for whatever circumstances you're in, but if you can do that, it goes a long way to determining how good of a voice you have or how unique of a voice you have. Okay? Again, remember that all writing has a voice. Trying to write voicelessly is like trying to fry water. It's not going to work. It just creates more of a mess than it's worth. Again, I do not want to write like a robot. Okay? You don't have to use flowery language. You don't have to use extreme metaphors. I mean, I already told you I have a thing for weird metaphors. Okay? I'm not going to tell you the most infamous one because there's children present. Okay? But I will say, you don't have to use any kind of creative flourishes. Just be you. Okay, your voice is still going to come through and make your writing distinctly yours. The other thing is don't fake it. Okay, don't try to come across as too highfalutin. Okay, to give you an example here, think about what you typically think of when you think of a college professor. Okay, what's the stereotype college professor voice sound like? That sounds kind of snooty, right? It's very much, I use high-born words. I use language that you wouldn't understand, you plebe, okay? Things like that. That's not really the way college professors talk, at least none of the ones that I know, okay? But that's the stereotype we have because there were certain ones that talked like that and used that sort of voice, and I will say type, but they seem to be in okay? But at the very least, just try to embrace your own voice. Don't try to fake something that you're not, okay? Don't try to make it into, I have to sound more intellectual, or I have to sound smarter, or I have to sound more ideal, okay? Just be you, okay? Don't try to hide who you are. Be proud. I mean that, okay? All right. And we have the last one. Good writing means more than good grammar. Okay, there's some people who avoid writing as much as possible because their grasp on grammar is the best, or maybe they consistently break rules or misspell words. Okay, that's absolutely no reason not to write. Okay, good writing is not dictated by grammar. It's based more on the content. Okay, whether they are well thought out, well reasoned, and presented in a way that the audience understands. Okay, you can write grammatically horribly, okay? But as long as the idea gets out there, it's still going to be quality. Now, it probably needs some fixing. It's going to need some editing, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, okay? You don't necessarily have to write it out perfect. That's what workshopping is for. That's what proofreading is for. That's what editors are for, okay? But the point is the idea has to be there and it has to be communicated in a way that people will understand, okay? Now, contrary to what every grammar-checking pedant on social media will tell you, grammar is but one component of what can make quality writing. You may know this this term more commonly called a grammar Nazi. Okay, they're the ones who will correct spelling errors on social media without even engaging in what the speaker even had to say in the first place. Okay, they're very judgy about this sort of thing, and they really shouldn't be because grammar does not dictate the quality of an argument. Grammar does not dictate the quality of the writing. Okay, grammar just means okay, I know how things technically work. Okay, to put it another way, perfect grammar cannot turn garbage writing into Shakespeare. Okay, if you encounter that is grammatically perfect and says absolutely nothing, it's not any good. Okay, it is failing the true test of writing quality. All right, let's talk about applying this concept. So, as much as I say that you don't have to have perfect grammar, it does help to know the rules. Okay, learn them and apply them. Okay, despite possibly not being able to articulate an explanation for them, most students in college know how the rules and standards of written English go. If there's any idea that gives you consistent trouble, research that idea and find out what the standard is supposed to be. If there's an issue that you have concerning usage of punctuation, for instance, okay, I know a lot of people who have trouble with comma usage, in that they use too many. Okay, I've actually read a paper from a student writer who, I swear to God, decided that he was going to use commas like a chef uses pepper. He basically littered his entire paper with commas to the point where it was a 3-page long run-on sentence, and there were commas where they shouldn't have been, and there were even commas in places that really didn't need to be. There was a stretch of 6 words in a row where each one was separated with a comma, and it wasn't even it was a sentence, or it was trying to be a sentence. Okay? So, if you have certain issues with certain aspects of grammar, look them up. Stuff that you are consistently being told, hey, you need to fix this, or hey, this is coming up in editing. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, look at what's going on. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. Supposed to be. You should recognize a few rules apply in every instance. Okay. Not every rule you learn applies in every instance, and some of them are strictly regional in nature or up to personal taste, such as the Oxford comma, which I illustrated for you in the video. Okay, as I mentioned here, because English is an amalgamated language, it's impossible to follow every rule all the time, and in fact, sometimes good usage means that you violate the rules. Okay, there are certain specific spelling rules people have gone away from because there are too many exceptions. The biggest one that comes off the top of my head: I before E except after C. Okay, that is a very common spelling rule that's quoted to elementary school kids all the time. The only problem is if you look around in the English language, there's at least 35 words that violate that rule. Okay. Okay, so again, rules do not apply in every instance. Very few of them do. Okay. Always edit your writing for correctness. Okay. This is when you get into proofreading mode, not revision mode. Okay. Again, revision is about content. Proofreading is going to be about polish. That's going to be grammar. Okay. Check your language against the rules to make sure you're following them to the best of your ability. Have peers to proofread your work helps in this effort as well. Again, workshop groups. So workshopping is for. That's what editors are for. Okay. They're there to coach you. They're there to help you and let you know, okay, this needs to be fixed, so you can go back and fix it in your final draft. Okay. Then focus on the errors that you regularly make. Again, there's ones that you always make. Focus on those as you edit, and then you'll learn to look for them first. Eventually, the more you focus on them, the less you're actually going to make those errors. Okay? All right, so that does it for the 10 core concepts. The last thing on the slides for this week was the first writing assignment. Now, a little bit of confusion in terms of what I'm asking for here. Okay, so there's I've had at least some emails where people were asking, so do I have to go to a college and find a scholarship or whatever? Here is what I'm looking for. I am looking for scholarships that are not offered by the colleges themselves. I'm looking for private providers. Okay, that is to say that they are usually non-for-profit groups, and they will offer scholarships to worthy students within a certain focus area. Okay, typically having something to do with the founding or the base principles of that group. Okay, example I gave the one that I applied for was from the Ayn Rand Institute. Okay, not familiar with Ayn Rand. She was a 20th century philosopher, Soviet-born. Uh, Became a U.S. citizen eventually. Uh, Ayn Rand was very much into a philosophy called activism, which is basically to say that every person is entitled to the fruits of their own labors, and others who do not, anyone who does not deserve to live. Okay. Uh, Now, The Fountainhead is one of her better known works, which is what I used for my essay at that time. Obviously, to be honest, I did not win that scholarship, mainly because of the analysis I gave was kind of half-hearted. Uh, if I had known some of her other works, I probably would not have applied for it at all. The main one I comes to mind, the one that she's best known for is a book called Atlas Shrugged, which gives us the term going Galt, where you have the character of John Galt, who is an industrialist, and he convinces other CEOs and titans of industry to basically go on strike. So they're not paying their taxes. They're not even participating in society. They're creating their own utopia where they can rest on their profits, and they do not have to answer to anyone. If this sounds familiar to any gamers out there, this is actually the concept that the underwater colony in BioShock is running under. Okay, they very much cite Rand as their inspiration. Okay, and now keep in mind, this is stuff that's really gotten out of favor. Okay, with a lot of people out there, and the industrialists are supposed to be the hero of this novel. Okay, to the average reader, though, they just seem like a bunch of jerks. Okay, so just keep in mind that's if you encounter Rand again, that is the type of philosophy that she championed. Okay, I will say partly inspired by backlash from communism, but at the same time, geez. Okay. All right, so here's the situation that you are writing for this assignment. Okay, you need to find a scholarship provider, a private scholarship provider that is preferably separate from a college. Okay, that gives you a application for a scholarship that includes an essay requirement where you have to write some kind of essay about a certain topic. Okay, many times these organizations will ask you to write an essay that gives about a topic within their focus. Okay, for instance, just hypothetically speaking, if you were applying for a scholarship from the Sierra Club, they'd want to have you do some kind of essay on an environmental issue. Okay, other less political groups may ask you about what your career plans are and ask you to analyze what your intended career, how your intended career fits in with the goals of that group. Now, you need to find the scholarship program that you're going to apply to. Okay, this is not intended to be an actual application unless you want it to be. Okay. Second thing is you have to write an essay to attach to that application for the scholarship based on whatever criteria, whatever subject matter they want you to write about. Okay? Some scholarship providers will tell you what to write. Others may not necessarily. They may give you a general idea. But if they give you a specific topic, I need to know. Okay? Here's the other thing to keep in mind. All right? They have their own. Each scholarship provider is going to have its own requirements for how long the essay has to be. Generally speaking, it's usually about 500 words. Okay, the essay I'm going to ask you to write is going to be considerably longer. Okay, mainly because it needs to fit in with college requirements. Okay, so here's the requirements that I have you using. I want you to use my length requirements for the purpose of the assignment. If you decide that you want to apply for that particular scholarship, then you can edit it down to what they require. okay? But for the purposes of this assignment for this class, the essay has to be 3 to 5 pages in length, has to be double spaced, 11 or 12 point font. The 3 fonts that are there, Arial, Times New Roman, or Calibri, are standard word fonts that are acceptable for accessibility. It needs to have proper MLA format for margins, page numbers, and the name block. It should also have no title pages. MLA does not allow people to use title pages. It is their opinion that a title page is basically wasting a tree. So they don't use title pages. When you title an essay, the title has to go directly above the start of the text. It should be centered directly above the start of the essay. Okay? Mention that a works cited page will not be required for this assignment. However, if you use more than 2 outside sources for your work, you're going to need to include citations and a proper works cited page. We're going to take a look in a minute here to a resource website that you can use to try to help you with that. Again, as I mentioned, if you find a requirement from a scholarship provider, please supply their requirements for the essay along with your essay. Be sure to use their guidelines on content if possible. Okay? Content, not length. Use my standards for length, but use their guidelines for content. Okay? Let me double check this, dude. Pretty sure I gave you another Thursday. So I'm pretty sure, yeah. Okay, this assignment is actually due by October 9th at midnight. Okay? You're going to be turning into eCampus under the same tab that you turned in the Icebreaker. It's going to be under Unit 1. Okay? There will be a new link there. Here's the thing. It's not going to be available until October 6th. Okay? Actually, October 7th, excuse me. It's not going to be available until October 7th because that's going to encourage you to get some feedback from your teammates. Okay? You're going to have full weeks to workshop this essay. First week is going to be the week of September 28th. Okay? Let me mark on here. This is what I get for trying to draw with a mouse. Okay, so it should be September 28th. Okay, that is the revision workshop week. Okay, and then the next week, which is the week of October 5th, is going to be the proofreading. So that's grammar, spelling, and mechanics. Okay, the way the workshops will work is that you guys are going to post drafts as replies to your team thread on the team discussion board. Okay. Reply to the team thread with your essay as a file attachment. The other members of the group are going to download your essay, read it, and then they're going to post their feedback. Okay. I want this to be constructive feedback as much as possible. We'll get more into what you need to give when we get closer to that week. Okay. But I want you guys to be giving each other feedback. Everyone needs to participate in this. Everyone has to present a draft. Everyone needs to give feedback. Okay? All right, one other thing I want to do before I get into other things, and that is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to take you to a site that's going to help you with the LA requirements if you need them. Okay? That would be this site here. This is the Purdue OWL website. OWL stands for Online Writing Lab. Okay. The place that you want to go is right here on this page. And then this takes you to the homepage for the Online Writing Lab. There's a number of tabs here. This is also a good one for grammar issues. Okay. If you look at OWL exercises, those are grammar exercises. Okay. You have some general writing links over here, which will take you to writing process, okay, things like that. Mainly, I give it to you guys for their MLA guide, which is probably the most accurate MLA guide out there. Okay, it is extremely up to date, even more so than the print guides. They basically get the rules first and broadcast it to you. Okay, so The MLA formatting and style guide is what you primarily want for this, and that goes category by category, shows you how to do in-text citations, how to format quotations, and specifically I use it for the works cited page. Okay, how to do listings on a works cited page. Now, we're going to come back to this site later in the semester and go in detail on how to do this stuff. But it would be helpful for you guys to see it right now before we get into this first one, because some of you are probably going to be doing a little bit of research for the scholarship essay. Okay, so one other thing I want to do before we get into questions for this week, and that is we're going to talk about the weekly discussion topics. Okay. There's been a little bit of concern regarding these, okay? So I want to make it clear right now. They are done weekly. You are encouraged to post to them weekly. However, the way they are getting graded is they're being graded at the end of the semester based on participation, okay? You aren't going to find and have to skip a week if you miss one. However, it is helpful for you to keep up with them, because if you get to the end of the semester and it becomes too much of a crunch to try to do all of them at once, okay? And if you're holding off on MindTap for the same reason, don't do that. Do it as you go along, because otherwise you're going to have a crunch at the very end where you're trying to get every missing assignment done over the course of 2 or 3 days before everything unlocks, okay? The strict due date that I have for this, it was going to be December 5th, because that's when it locks, okay? So I figure every 3 weeks we can go through the discussion topics for anyone who hasn't had a chance to post yet. So real quick, we'll go through the topics here, starting with week 1. This was students getting cheated, okay? Yeah, just read through the discussion question here, okay? Skip the preamble here. Due to COVID-19, earlier in the year, all schools in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland shut down completely, ending their school year early. Because of this, students were not able to take end-of-year exams, which are mandated by the British government and used by universities around the nation to determine placement. As a result of this, teachers were asked to speculate what students' results on exams would have been had they taken the exams, and these grades were collected by an independent contractor company who was going to assign virtual exam grades. However, in order to avoid grade inflation and fearing that teachers were grading their students too highly, the contractor company created an algorithm to predict exam grades, which took a number of factors into consideration, including a school's past history of exam results. 3 weeks ago, students received their exam results, and at least 40% of the students received scores which prevented them from entering universities, even when they had been previously accepted based on the teacher projections. The virtual exam scores rendered these students ineligible. This caused a massive protest among these students, many of which came from public schools in lower income areas which traditionally had lower resources and lower scores on the exams, while most private school students received equal grades, including an overall 2% of students who the algorithm gave higher grades to. To put this in perspective, the American equivalent of this situation would be if seniors already admitted to colleges suddenly had their SAT results vacated and replaced with a grade based on their past performance of students attending their high school. Near the middle of the month, though, the British government backed off from forcing students to accept the algorithmic grades and instead allowed the students to choose either the grades their teachers had given or the algorithm's grade, whichever was more favorable. This still does not address the inherent bias toward wealthy students in the algorithm's construction. For your discussion this week, talk about how you would react if you were a British student in this position, having a college acceptance taken away because of a grade you did not have control over. Would you react like many of the British students did, such as joining a protest, venting on social media, or petitioning the government or the universities? What would you say about the situation, and what other reactions would you have? And we do have 5 resources for you. These links can click through to articles or videos about that situation. All right, going on to week 2. Week 2, remembering Chadwick Boseman. Full week of emotional turmoil and news cycles full of violence and aggression came to a screeching halt late on Friday night when word came that actor Chadwick Boseman, best known for his lead role in 2018's Black Panther, had died after fighting colon cancer for 4 years, a period in which the actor had made many of the films that had made him a rising Hollywood star. Reaction was shocked and immediate, both from the acting community, in particular past co-stars Josh Gad, Denai Guerrera, and Michael B. Jordan posted poignant tributes to social media, and in the sports world, as two of Boseman's roles were as an NFL draft pick by the Cleveland Browns in the film Draft Pick, and as Jackie Robinson in the biopic 42. In a twist of cruel irony, Boseman passed away on the day Major League Baseball started a weekend devoted to honoring Robinson by having all MLB players wear 42 in tribute. Boseman's cause of death has led to a lot of reflection and thought about the current state of healthcare in America. As part of his treatments 4 years ago, he had been diagnosed as having stage 3 cancer, which Boseman was very young to have. He was 39 at his initial diagnosis, as the American Cancer Society recommends that screening for colon cancer start at age 45. He has brought attention to a troubling trend of colorectal cancer appearing in individuals at a younger age. The average age, according to the ACS, is 50. More than that, it's also been noted that no one outside of Boseman's medical circle and his family even know that he had a disease until his death. This has led to a lot of soul searching from social media, as the actor had been displaying a marked weight loss in recent months as he was fighting stage 4, leading to jokes about his body, which are now being criticized as being ableist. For your discussion this week, talk about how the situation affects you personally, whether it be your familiarity with Chadwick Boseman and his work or in regards to his health situation. Research some of what's come up in the news in regards to Boseman and discuss how the perception of him has changed since Friday night. I will say it's kind of ironic because in the spring I actually wound up doing a similar topic about Kobe Bryant. So we're starting out both these semesters in 2020 kind of harsh. All right. So on to week three. Week 3, Mulan and the film industry's shifting model. So here's the topic for this week. Just got posted yesterday. The global pandemic has changed many things about how the world as we know it operates, with a lot of changes having to come to seemingly one of the major industries affected by this movie watching, as movie theaters, usually bustling during the summer blockbuster season, were almost entirely shuttered since mid-March until the past 3 weeks, as theater chains have been slowly ramping up reopening their locations and new movies delayed from the summer begin trickling into them. Among the recent major new releases to come to theaters has been comedy sequel Bill and Ted Face the Music and action thriller Tenet. Some companies, however, have fully shifted their model in terms of their new releases, opting instead for digital releases. Most prominently, this has occurred with animated features originally scheduled for late spring or summer releases. The first of these, Trolls World Tour, being the model acting as proof of concept for other studios. The first major mover, however, in terms of live-action blockbusters was Disney, who moved one significant summer release, Artemis Fowl, to its Disney Plus streaming service. On Labor Day weekend, he did a similar release delayed from March live-action remake Mulan, with a twist. The film would be available to subscribers at a premium, pay an extra $29.99 above the subscription price for access on the opening weekend. There are elements to this release that are different from other video-on-demand new releases, though. Subscribers do not receive a limited viewing window. They keep access to the film as long as they keep their Disney Plus subscription active. Previous VOD films were rentals that lasted 48 hours. Subscribers who do not want the premium access will be able to view the film when it releases on the service normally, which is speculated to be December. These differences do not convince some viewers, who point to the high price of the film. Other VODs cost $19.99, as well as that you have to be a current Disney Plus subscriber. Currently, subscriptions are on $7.99 a month in order to view it, whereas other VODs were available on multiple platforms. Tuesday reporting, however, shows that the strategy may have paid off for Disney, as subscriptions increased 68% over the Labor Day weekend. A similar spike occurred in early July around the highly anticipated release of Hamilton on Disney+. And it is now rumored Disney may take a similar approach with another similarly delayed blockbuster, the MCU film Black Widow. For your discussion this week, take the side of an average film consumer and talk over how you feel about these changes. Why would you be willing to take a potential hit to view the film, or conversely, why is it not worth it to you to pay so much for one movie? Take into account all the circumstances around the film, including what the purchase price includes. Okay? And again, we have some links here to give you some more information. Every single one of these is going to have links attached with them so that you have some more information. Okay? All right, so that's all I've got here. So let's go ahead and open it up. I know we have a limited window here for questions. I know we have very few of you here, but we will try our best here. So if you have any questions or concerns that you have regarding week 3, the lecture, discussion board, or anything, go ahead and raise your hand, and I will recognize you. All right, Milagros, I see your hand there. Go ahead with your question.
For when you said workshop week, when you wanted us to post our essay for other people can review it and edit it, did you want us to post it only on our group discussion board or in the whole class discussion board?
It needs to go into the discussion thread for your group.
Okay, just the group. All right, not the
For-
class.
Yeah, your team is going to be the ones giving you feedback. If you post to the whole class, that's going to be 74 other people who can see it, and you're going to be getting 74 people worth of feedback on it. That's not going to be good for anybody.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Presuming since everybody here is got a name instead of being anonymous, I'm assuming all you guys were able to sign in eCampus. I know that they were having some issues. We'll keep it open here for a few more minutes. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and ask them now. About 3 minutes here, we'll go ahead and shut it down. All right, then. There's no further questions here. We'll go ahead and call it off here. Thank you to everybody who was able to show and everybody who was able to get through it, should say. This is going to be posted to YouTube later tonight, and I will be seeing you guys next week, same time, same location, and hopefully eCampus will be cooperative. Okay? See you guys next time.